There's an idea that's been quietly shaping our lives for over 70 years. From the stock market all the way to our social media feeds, it actually started as a secret weapon during the Cold War, but it escaped the lab, and now it's pretty much running the world. Let's break down how that happened.
Okay, let's start with the 2008 financial crisis. In the chaos that followed, leaders everywhere were scrambling, trying to figure out what went wrong. Germany's former president put it pretty bluntly. He said the financial markets had become a monster. But what if the monster wasn't really the system itself?
What if the real cause was something you can't even see? A powerful, almost invisible theory about who we are as human beings. A theory that's been programmed right into the code of our modern society. That's the mystery we're going to unravel right now.
To really get this, we have to look at the 2008 crash not just as some big economic failure, but as a symptom of a much deeper glitch in our societal operating system. And believe it or not, the guy who helped build that system, he's the one who admitted it.
That's right. Standing before Congress, Alan Greenspan, we're talking one of the most powerful economists on the entire planet, admitted there was a fundamental flaw in the free market ideology he'd championed for decades. And the flaw wasn't in the math, it was in his basic assumption about people. And this is it. This is the flaw, the idea of homo economicus, or economic man. It's this model that says you, me, all of us, are basically just calculating, predictable, and totally selfish beings at our core. A super simplified version of humanity that turned out to be dangerously powerful. So where on earth did it come from? For that, we've got to go back in time. Because the origins of this idea, escaping into the mainstream, well, they lie in the fear and the paranoia of the Cold War.
Okay, so imagine this. You're a military strategist back in the 1950s. The fate of the entire world rests on you outthinking an enemy who could launch nuclear weapons at any given moment. You can't trust them. You definitely can't read their minds. So what do? Well, you invent a whole new way to predict what they'll do, based on one single, kind of chilling assumption.
And this was their big breakthrough. To avoid a nuclear holocaust, strategists made a radical choice. They decided to simplify the enemy. They just stripped away all the messy, unpredictable parts of human nature, things like morality, honor, ideology, and just assumed the person on the other side was a purely rational, self-interested player whose only goal was to win.
And just like that, international relations wasn't this complex dance of diplomacy anymore. It was a high-stakes poker game. You can't see the other player's cards, so you have to assume that every single move they make is a calculated trick to maximize their gain. In a game like that, suspicion is the only rational strategy.
Now, this purely selfish model of a human wasn't just a strategic tool for war games. It turned out to be the perfect ghost to haunt the new thinking machines that were just coming online back then, computers.
I mean, just look at this comparison. On the left, you've got a real complex human. How do you program emotion or morality into a computer? It's basically impossible. But on the right, you have player 2. He's simple. His motivations are crystal clear. He is perfectly calculable, which means he's perfectly programmable.
And here's what's so critical to get. This wasn't just some philosophical choice they made. It was a technical one. The early supercomputers, they just couldn't handle the nuances of human psychology. But they were absolutely brilliant at calculating profit and loss. The selfish human model was the only one the machine could actually understand. So here's how they did it, step by step. First, they modeled the human as this selfish agent. Second, they wrote that assumption directly into the code. And third, they just unleashed the machines to run the game, whether that was simulating nuclear war or eventually trading on Wall Street. As one Lehman Brothers executive put it, this was the power of a machine.
But this idea, it didn't stay locked up in military bunkers or on Wall Street trading floors. Nope, it escaped. And it began to remake our world in its own image, becoming a really strange kind of self-fulfilling prophecy.
And this is maybe the most important takeaway here. The theory didn't just stay a theory. It became a trap, a theory that replicates through technology, which then encourages us to act in a certain way, which then, you guessed it, proves the original theory was right all along. It's this massive feedback loop. It doesn't just describe reality, it actively creates it.
And you see this everywhere once you start looking. When friendship becomes networking, when trust becomes a calculated risk, when we start to see kindness as just a hidden strategy for personal gain, when our social media posts are designed to please an algorithm instead of connecting with a real person, that's the trap at work. It redefines our most basic human interactions as these cold, calculated transactions.
This quote really just says it all. The theory doesn't just predict selfish behavior,
It manufactures it. By building all of our systems on the assumption that everyone is out for themselves, we create an environment where being selfish becomes the most rewarded and therefore the most logical way to behave.
So, we've seen how this idea was born and how it completely took over. What's the big picture here? And more importantly, what's your role in this giant, selfish game?
The great irony in all this is that a theory designed to protect us by assuming the absolute worst in our enemies has now led us to assume the worst in each other. It's created this world of constant, low-grade suspicion, a Cold War not between nations, but between individuals.
So just think about it. Whenever you interact with an algorithm, navigate a financial market, or feel that pressure to brand yourself online, you're playing on a field that was designed by and for player 2. You're playing inside a system that was literally built to reward selfish behavior.
And that leaves us with this final, kind of nagging question. In a world that's being built more and more on this cold, game theory logic, what happens to things like trust, or altruism, or loyalty? What happens to all the complex, messy, and often wonderfully irrational parts of us that refuse to play the selfish game? It's definitely something to think about.